Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to the first event of Design Development Days, that is, Walk of Life as a UX Designer. Our speaker for the day is none other than Miss Charu Choudha. She'll be joining us in a while. We are so happy and so glad that she's here with us for the first event, and I hope that you all are equally excited. Show us your excitement in the chat section so that our speaker knows how excited you are. And let me take this moment to introduce our speaker. Ms. Charu is here with us. She is a UX designer with 7 years of experience currently at Google, building intelligence based experiences to empower customer engagement of Google products. Before this, she was also at Microsoft, where she was designing the first Microsoft Office app for Android and iOS, focusing on consumer as well as enterprise market. In addition to that, she's been a contributor to the Microsoft Fluent open source design system. She has also worked with the product team of responsible for shipping Microsoft Sticky Notes and OneNote for Android and iOS. That's not it. She has also worked with Zomato, where she designs experiences for Zomato Gold version 1, food ordering redesign of Zomato, consumer app, and revamped the visual language across Zomato apps. And the list goes on. So let's welcome our speaker, ma'am.
Hey, hi everyone. Hi Tavleen, and thank you so much
Hello,
for
ma'am.
joining. Can you all hear me properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it
I
all good?
think, yes. Yeah.
Great, great.
Over
If
to
you
you,
all
ma'am.
can hear me, reply on the comments. And yeah, thank you for joining today. And I'm so excited to be here. And it's always amazing to talk to other designers in the community and students. So I'm really happy. And I today I thought, as I think Tavleen already mentioned, I've been working in the industry for a few years, and I today got this opportunity, and I thought I'd love to share a few things which I have learned as a designer and throughout these years, and it might help you, or you might be able to resonate with these learnings. So I've put together a small, I think, PPT, and love to share that and talk through what I want to discuss today. But I would love to keep it more interactive, and please do reply on the comment section, and also feel free to ask questions, I think, at the end of the session. So I'll start sharing my screen. Let me know if once you can see my screen. So can you all see my screen? Is it just 1 second? Yeah, can you all see my screen? And is it in full screen mode? I might not be able to see the comments, so it'll be very nice if Tavleen you can reply and that you all can see.
Yes, ma'am. The screen is properly visible and full screen mode.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, so as I said, I am a UX designer at Google currently, and I'm very happy to be here. Today, I want to start with a small quiz. And firstly, I want you all to answer a few things, and let's see who knows about these things. So this is one of the screens, one of the early UIs of a product we all love and use. And can you guess which product is this? I tried to hide the logo as well, but I think it's still visible. But can you all guess which product is this? And it's kind of the early days of this product. Long, like you, from the UI, you can make out that it's really long back in time. And I cannot read in comments, but please write down there. And Tavleen, if you could just read out a few of them if there are any comments.
Yes, ma'am. I'll be reading. Pranav says, I'm sorry, Twitter. And there are 3 Twitters and 1 Reddit.
Okay, awesome. So, yes, I think you're right. This was the early interface of Twitter, and now this is how it looks like. And your guess was absolutely right. But if we just go back for a second, no, actually, let's keep going. Which one do you think is this UI? Can you all guess? This is also another product we all use, I think, regularly. Just write in the comments and feel free to take guesses.
There are no guesses right yet.
Come on, guys, look at this UI and think.
Google
I
search,
know this is
Yahoo,
Google
Google,
search. Okay.
Adobe,
Okay.
Amazon.
Okay, right. This is definitely tricky, and it's just so long back. Even everything is pixelated. I couldn't get a better picture. But whoever guessed Amazon is absolutely right. This is the early days of how Amazon looked like, and it kind of started with just books, which talked about I mean, just started with as an online store for books, and it had absolutely no features, no colors, and today it has evolved to something like this, which we all use, and it's so I think vibrant, and it keeps on changing, and it's so lively, right? And the third one is finally this UI. Which one do you think is this UI? This is easy to guess. Are there any guesses? Feel free to write on and
Netflix.
take it. Netflix, right? Any other guesses?
Up till now, they're all Netflix.
Okay, yeah, that's actually quite right. And this is the
IMDb. There's one difference in
IMDb.
IMDb.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I think everyone who gets Netflix is absolutely right. This was the early days of Netflix, where it started with just being a movie rental website. But I think it was pretty much like it's still pretty much similar. With I mean, in terms of goals or in terms of features, it's similar, but it has changed drastically in terms of experience. So, yeah, I just had these few questions in the beginning, but what did we see? What is the common thing across all these products? Or what is the common thing across what happened to these products with time? What do you guys think? So let's go back a little and sorry, let's go back a little and look at Twitter early days. This was Twitter. Absolutely, I mean, you can't make out that it's a micro blogging site, which it has become today, where people, even brands, use it for microblogging. Similarly, Amazon started like this, and with just focusing on books, with like absolutely gray UI and so much of text nobody would like to read, but it made sense at that time, right? And now it has become very vibrant. And Netflix again. And I'm sorry I didn't put the current, I think, screen, but yeah. So I think one thing which is common across all these products is change. They have been changing, and we all hear that change is the only consistent thing, which is true for products, right? Because they all have changed with time to match the user's taste, the evolving lifestyle, and basically they've always been open to change. And I read this quote somewhere which was about which just said that, if you are saying that we've always done it this way and you're not open to change, it's definitely the most dangerous thing you can say, and it's a dangerous phrase to use. And if you're doing this, then this is something to change, right? And this applies not just to products, but I would say overall to society, designers, products, people in general. This is the truth. Like, if you want to grow, if you want to evolve, you should be very open to change. And that's the theme of the talk today, because I want to share how personally I have evolved as a designer, what are the things I have learned from my own journey, and how I have learned to embrace change. Where initially I didn't start with such an open mind, but now things have changed a lot. So, what really happened throughout the journey? And we'll definitely focus on things on the learnings from point of view of a designer, because we all are designers here, or aspiring designers, or somebody who's interested in design. So we'd be looking at this from an eye of a designer. And before diving deep into that, I would love to give you a background about myself. And though Tavleen already introduced me, but I'd love to talk a little bit more about it. So, in my early years, my hometown is in Madhya Pradesh, in the central regions of India. It's a small town in MP where I did my schooling from. Until 2010, I was there. And then a certain change happened in my life, where I joined NIFT in Mumbai for my graduation. And I was there from 2010 to 14. I was living the student life, and it was absolutely awesome. And a lot of things, I think, a lot of doors opened up for me, and a lot of learnings happened while that time. Then I moved on to Zomato. Zomato was my first job as a full time product designer, and I joined Zomato in 2015. At that time, it was a growing and evolving startup, and I was glad I went there, because it was absolutely the right time to be in a startup. Sorry. And after that, I moved to Microsoft, where I got to work with amazing teams and amazing products like Microsoft Office and a lot more. And I think I worked there for 3 years, and I got a lot of appreciation working while working in Microsoft. And I got a lot of, I think I learned a lot of things from amazing mentors all around the globe. And finally, this was the switch which I made recently, where I moved to Google and I joined as UX designer in Google Hyderabad. And here I have started working on a few projects where we are really trying to focus on intelligence and customer experience, and pretty new projects. So I'm really excited for it, and I'm actually having a good time from past few months, because it's a new kind of community for me. And that's how my journey has been till now. And this is one quote which I absolutely resonate with, which says that if you want to develop a passion for learning, because if you do that, you'll never cease to grow. And um, more than anything, I've always been passionate about learning new things. And I think as a designer, it's extremely valuable. Being open and being able to learn and adapt. It's one skill which is neglected, which has never been valued in your early years, because you just want to kind of focus in one thing and be the best at that. But I think eventually things change, and you realize the power of learning, or the passion for learning, if you've developed, how beneficial is it going to be in your life. So I would love to talk about being a student and what really I learned from being a student. And I'm sure a lot of you are students here, and you can resonate with what I'm saying. If you can reply on the comments, and I'd love to like know about your experiences as well. So mainly, there were these three things which kind of, as a student, I think I learned from my experience being in a design college, and being in a city which is very huge, and brought different people together. I'm talking about Mumbai. So my education happened in Mumbai NIFT. And it was a design it's a design college, where a lot of, I think, subjects are being taught. So it's not specially focused on one subject, but it's really like you can learn a lot about different types of subjects under design. So a few things I learned, I think, as a designer being there was, firstly, um, I mean, as a kid, I was extremely creative, but I was all around the place. All over the place, and didn't have any structure in my thought process or my thinking, and some theoretically as well as practical senses. I learned how to think structurally as a designer, and I'm sure you all must have heard of this framework of design thinking. I got introduced to it, and if you're not familiar, then do Google and learn about it. It's called the design thinking framework, where you start, where you have like different stages in a journey when you're designing something. The first one always starts with empathizing with your users or with your audiences for whom you're designing for. The second stage is around defining. So, after empathizing, after understanding what your users are facing, what their problems are, what are they trying to achieve, you define your goals of your project, that what is it that you really want to do. And the third phase is you ideate on based on that problem statement. Uh, be free and be open and put all your ideas together. Move to prototyping and actually create a physical version of all your ideas. And the last one is testing, where you can actually give these prototypes, give these products or whatever you made to your actual users, your actual audience, and test and learn from the feedback. And the last stage, which is not shown here, is actually implementing that feedback to your original idea. And this kind of gave me a process to use when I was working on my design projects, because initially I was going all over the place. Sometimes I would really start with an idea for a project, and I would kind of put all my efforts into making it finished and polished. And later I realized, hey, that concept didn't really work actually. So I had a very artistic mindset, and this kind of helped me changing or moving towards a more designer mindset, which was more innovative, like being open or embracing innovation. The second thing which I learned about was being hands on. So there's one of the professors in our college who always said that throw away all your first 10 ideas. Like whenever we got project, we were told that, okay, write down 10 ideas and just throw them away, because that's the common thing which everybody else is thinking. So start using your 11th idea, and that's where you'll get something, something crucial or something breakthrough. And this thinking really helped me in becoming hands on. Whenever I was tackling my projects, design projects, I would first try to explore, and then try to filter down, and I think filter down the best ideas. And I observed that commonly my initial 10 ideas were not really that great, but after that something happens where you like start to think outside of the box. Third thing which I learned as being in a design school was that cultural identity is very important, and you should be embracing it. I personally came from a small town in Madhya Pradesh, and going to the big city like Mumbai, where you would meet people, students from different cultural backgrounds. One of the things which helped me was becoming extremely, I think, comfortable and proud of your cultural identity. Not just that, but also discovering how our own like culturally we have been um, appreciating design so much, and how historically design thinking or just design principles have been implemented or used throughout history in, for example, the amazing Indian typography, or like this was one of the fonts which I think one of the designers created. It was inspired from all your hand painted fonts in India, which you find on different banners or interesting trucks and everything. So I came across this font, and this really changed my thought process. I started to actually notice different art forms historically, different, I think, places where design is actually, design thinking has been used across history. Like, this was another example of art form which is called Pattachitra. The interesting thing about this is the way of visual storytelling. So, which has been like around the around the corner from a long time, but we I mean, I never noticed it, and then I became suddenly fascinated with how beautifully an entire story is told in this one board. And it's a fine example of storyboarding, right? Which we these like which is a technique which we use currently in current days as a designer. So this was the point where I started gathering inspiration from your own culture, and I started putting that in my projects. I remember I created a kind of interesting chessboard which was inspired by Indian mythology, and a lot of things like that. So I think when you start doing it, it's gonna be extremely, I think, fun. uh, and even if you're like, I would say, as a student, you have lot of freedom. So that's what I learned, to absolutely be creative and go out of the box, and don't be scared of not exploring, like, ideas which are crazy. The I think the idea is to be crazy as a student, and explore as many as things you would like to, and be open to the culture and the society and things happening around you, and not just like be constrained and look at limited things. So that was, I think, three things I learned. Moving on to the next phase, where I joined Zomato. And as I said, Zomato was, I joined in 2015, and it was a growing company at that time. I think the like mobile mobile phones were started to getting used for ordering food, and it was a pretty new concept, and a lot of new things we worked on which were very new to India. And these were some of the projects I worked on, some of the things. For example, Zomato World was one of the projects I worked on, and it was one of the best projects I've worked on till now in my career, because it was actually a subscription plan, which could, I don't know if you all have heard of it, but it could like give you an benefit of getting a free food or a free drink on whatever you purchase when you go into a restaurant. And it was an absolutely new concept for India at that time. And the way we kind of experimented, introduced it, made changes, and we were extremely fast to respond to the environment and learn about our users. And it was definitely a turning point for my career, where I learned a lot about how design actually works in startups. Then I worked on, I think, couple of projects on main consumer apps, where we kept on redesigning, I think, Zomato's homepage experiences, where users could discover appropriate restaurants or whatever they are looking for in the app in a smoother way. And also I worked a little bit on the first, I think, first ever Zomato experience, where you could like track where your order is. And I remember we didn't even have the tech to introduce maps at that time. So we made like whatever possible tech was there, we made good use of it. And yeah, these were amazing projects which I worked on. And it was absolutely like energetic team. A few things which I took away from being in Zomato was, we used to always, I think, hear this in Zomato, like hustle, hustle. And that was one of the main things, I think, which I learned over there. It was around thinking fast and keep on hustling. So, as I mentioned about Zomato Gold, these are some of the screens where, if you can see, I don't know if you can see properly, but over here you are basically this was the landing page of Zomato Gold, where you could we wanted to call out the benefits in like small crisp 4 points, and these were just some of the explorations which I mean I made and which we tested out with users, about like what is the right language which will work, which is actually helping us communicate the message properly, what is the layout which will work. Like you can see everything we kind of tested, and we made a lot of I think variations, experimented with them, tested with them, and then learned from the users and applied those learnings back and said that, hey, maybe this concept or this kind of text or this layout is not working, maybe like a card carousel is better, so let's do that. And then it was extremely like about thinking fast, because we were thinking fast, we were constantly keeping an eye on what or how is the audience reacting to the designs, and then making changes. So basically it was about moving fast, but at the same time being mindful about how your users are responding to your projects, right? I mean your concepts. The other thing was around breaking the design process. So, as I talked about how the design college taught me really about what design process is like, all the stages of design. What I did in Zomato was absolutely opposite, because I think the approach which we followed over there was, don't stick to the process, let's just break the process. So, and also I think this is also mentioned in a couple of few places, that you don't have to stick to a process as a designer. It's very non-linear. The design thinking process is non-linear, so you have to understand what is the project, what is the context, and then actually decide what process, how do you want to mold that process. So I can give you a few examples. As I said, Zomato Gold was an absolutely new project where we were working on a new idea. So this we followed exactly this process. But there were a couple of other projects which I worked on, like the consumer app. So we already had data from our users. We already knew what are the problems, right? So we didn't have to do define. We didn't have to do empathize. I mean, empathize is a natural process you always do, but we didn't really have to define the problems when I was started working on that project. Rather, we could just start with ideating and quick prototyping. So, ideating and prototyping were actually combined together, because somehow it felt like the static screens were not really getting across the idea properly. So, I made prototypes as well at the same time, and then tested it. So this was how the design process was not followed in a linear manner, but it worked, because that was the best thing to do for that timeline, for that project. So that's what I realized, that it's not always about sticking to the theoretical design process which we are taught about, right? And thirdly, I learned that staying playful will always make you more creative, and being creative is, of course, important always. So just stay playful. What I mean by that is, uh, it actually happens as designers that, like I personally am. Very interested uh, in doing like in doodling and everything. And when I started working on UX projects, I kind of left that behind. But in Zomato, I kind of understood that everyone really did their own things. So I think in one of the places I did a workshop. In our team outings, I did a workshop on sketchnoting, which was loved by everyone, and it kind of made me realize that how much I really love to doodle around and use sketchnoting as something to tell visual stories. And that made me feel really like creative and apart. So I kind of realized that it's always important to keep that interest alive. And I saw that some of the amazing designers in my team would also do whatever they like. Some were interested in learning pottery, some were um, kind of interested in designing puzzles and all. So everyone was doing what they loved. At the same time, work on your main projects, but don't, I think the side projects or that kind of hobbies as a designer are very important. So side projects are a big plus, always do them. And from that points onwards, I realized that I'm always gonna like continue working on my side projects whenever I get time. And this was my amazing team at Zomato, and I kind of learned a lot being there. Moving on to my years in Microsoft, and this is the time I think I joined in 2017, and initially I worked on a project called OneNote. I mean, I'm sure you might have heard of the app, and we were working in the app side of it, and we wanted to like introduce a way of short note taking or things like sticky notes for mobile. So I worked on that project. We kind of worked with a lot of other teams, and we shipped the first version of it in Android. And after that, I moved to another project, which was Microsoft Office app on mobile. And what we were really doing at this point was Microsoft Office had always been on desktop, and that's what the perception was about Microsoft Office. But we wanted to create an app which was like the app version of it, which was more intuitive on phone. You could use Microsoft Office on the go as a professional, as a student, and it would work smoothly. So that is what we wanted to achieve. We didn't want our users to have different apps for Word, for Excel, for PP, for PowerPoint, right? So we wanted to combine it all into one and give a smooth way of working with Microsoft Office on phone. And it was also a very entrepreneurial project in a big company like Microsoft. We were a small team in India who started working on this project, and it was amazing to work on a new, I think, idea in a big company, because you learn a lot more things then. And I think, yeah, these were some of the screens where which I worked on, which I think kind of this represents the projects I worked on basically. And the things which I mainly learned in Microsoft was these things. So the idea about thinking fast and slow was similar to, I think, as in Tomato. We were extremely fast and I think responsive towards the surroundings. Microsoft also taught me to think fast as well as to think slow. So there were phases when you would really like be fast and say that I want to change this in this certain feature, right? But at the same time, there was a time where you would be slow and say, okay, let me take a step back and see that is this going in the right direction, is it working for all the use cases, because Microsoft products being used at such a large scale by such a big set of audiences, you need to ensure that it works for various kinds of use cases, edge cases. So there was definitely a time where you had to think slow as well as think fast. So I kind of became comfortable or learned that you have to maintain or balance both as a designer. The second thing I learned here was working in chorus is absolutely, I think, inevitable in as a designer. So I always thought being a designer is like a solo thing, and I'll just sit on my laptop and keep generating concepts. But that didn't really happen. I realized that there are huge teams in Microsoft. Some are researchers, and some are product managers, developers, data people, and marketing teams, right? So there were all these different teams. Whenever you work on a project, they all have their own specialization, so you should know how to collaborate with them, how to kind of work with them. And that these are the skills which I think I learned being in Microsoft. And I think as a designer, everyone needs to learn, maybe not initially, but at some point you need to really learn, and these will help you, I think, grow forward in your career. And the third thing which was very important, which was actually taught to me by one of my mentors in Microsoft. And it was about this T-shaped skill, which Microsoft really appreciated. So what it really means is, since it's such a big organization, you as a designer could easily get lost, where you could, like, in a small team, you could get a lot of eyes on your work easily without doing much. And everyone would just know you, right? And they'll know that what is your strengths, right? But when you move to a larger organization, even it applies for colleges and being a student, that as a designer, it's very important to have an identity. So what is it that you want people in the community to know you about, right? What is that strength? And it doesn't have to be one, because as designers, there's this the I shaped one, which is expert, which I think is good if you like that. I personally felt, and what I learned was that better model is T-shaped. The I-shaped is the expert model. The horizontal line here is the journalist model, where you generalize a lot of things, and you're not special in anything, but you're just good at a lot of things. And the T-shaped model ensures that you're doing both. So you're good at a few things, but you're extremely good at one thing or two things, right? Because as a designer, I said, as I told you, that I was extremely open to learn. So I'd learn everything. I would learn motion design, graphic design, UX research. I wanted to learn everything. I did workshops. I mean, I did classes on UX writing. So I was very open to learn everything. But eventually I realized that if you want to make an identity in a big company, which is very important, because you want everyone to understand or to respect or value your opinions, and kind of really understand what your strengths are, you need to be extremely good at few things. So work on that a lot. But at the same time, you need to kind of have an idea of everything, so that this can help you in working with others, in kind of, if you're left completely like independent on your project, you will not get confused as to what to do, because you kind of have an idea of everything as a designer. So UX design is a big, I think, field, because as I said, you have lots of, I think, smaller things inside it. You could become a visual designer, could be a UX designer, researcher, or like a lot of, or everything, right? So try and think, and after you go back today, question yourself, what are the few things you're really good at, and what do you want to master. But at the same time, keep everything, I think, be good at everything. Don't like just leave others behind. And this was my amazing team at Microsoft, which we worked together on a lot of projects, and it was a fun time being there. And finally I moved to Google, and I joined last year, and as I said, I've been working on a few interesting projects which are quite new, and we focus a lot on intelligence, on consumer experiences, feedbacks from users. And these are things I learned till now in Google, and I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot more things very soon. But to give you an idea, I think I learned from just being in your user shoes to actually live in your user shoes. What that really means is, um, we are, I mean, the process, the way we work in Google is extremely user centered. So we try to not just understand our users for that particular, maybe, like, say if I'm working on an app and I just don't want to understand that how is the person using my app, like, that's not enough for me. I want to really understand what their background is. Do they belong to the NBU, which is the next billion user market, which is like India, which is growing and everything? What is their age group? Are they like in the senior age, or the, younger Gen Z kind of people? Or, I mean, really know your user, really understand their lifestyle, and then design for them. So I think this is very crucial. And I'm of course not in research, but even being a designer, I am pushed every day to learn more and more about the users I'm designing for. Not just focus on how they're reacting to your concepts or your concepts with them, but actually really learn where they are coming from. The next thing I've started learning or I'm learning here is being intelligence first, and how to, as a designer, think of including intelligence, things like AI in your design thinking process. And there is a very good practical guide which Google design team has put together online. It's called People Plus AI Research, and you'll get some really good, I think, fundamental principles of how to design if you're kind of trying to include AI or intelligence, machine learning into your project. So, how do you, as a designer, use these concepts around like things like valuing your users' time? Or there are a lot of principles actually which you can learn in this guidebook, about being transparent, about being inclusive when you're designing for intelligence. So it's a great set of resource which you can use, and I'm also, I think, exploring and learning a lot about it, and how it really works in a real life scenario where you want to introduce concepts in your designs which maybe have AI. So you need to understand how it actually technically works, and then kind of design for it. And the last thing I learned in Google is about being community focused, as I was never a person who would like extremely involved in the community, but I love this idea of having a good set of people in your design community and learning from them. So in Google, it's appreciated if you are, I mean, there are small teams which works like small companies in a big organization, and they're all really open to share their knowledge with each other. And there are communities where you can like go in and learn about, hey, what are the other products doing. And this I kind of realized that even for my personal life, it's such a good thing which I should take forward in my life, that be open and build a community around you, so that I mean, you could use social media or you could use any of your other channels as a student. It's such a good time to build community. But I think having a community will always help you in terms of sharing your opinions, learning about your opinions. And I think as a designer, that matters so much in long term. So this was another thing which I am taking away in for my lifetime after being in Google. And lastly, the things which I think from personal experiences or just overall personal learnings as a designer I have till now is, as I said, I have been talking about keep evolving, right? So learn all the new softwares. That's absolutely okay. Don't have to stick to one software. And not just softwares, like learn all the types of things you're interested in. It need not just be that I'm just interested in research methods, so I'll just stick to it. But just evolve as a designer. That is gonna take your career to a different level. The other thing is growth mindset. So I think I, as a designer, as a student, I struggled with a lot of things, right? Like I would think that, hey, I'm not really good at this, so I don't know if I should do this or not. I've had this thing in my mind when I was working, so I would often feel like, oh, I think I'm not good at presenting my work, so I don't know if I should be doing it right. And I would always seek somebody else's help to do that. But I think I learned that you have to have growth mindset, and this happened with practice, that I figured that it's very important. Even if you're not good at anything, try it out, and at least be good. I mean, at least be okay. It should not become a barrier in your growth. At least be okay with it, right? Uh, and if you might not know, you'll discover that you love such whatever you started with. Like for example, I personally was not very research oriented when I started as a designer. But if you ask me currently, I think research phase is the most interesting phase for me as a designer. So always keep a growth mindset. You might even become really good at the skill which you suck at initially. So yeah. And the third thing was around value of feedback. I think initially as a designer, I'd always hesitate sharing what I've made, or the concepts or my ideas, because at times I'll face some criticism, judgment, right? But eventually, I think what I learned was the feedback I'm getting is extremely valuable, because it's actually like somebody's taking time and effort to help me. So I started looking at it from a very open mind, and I started to realize the value of feedback. Now I've become so, I think, comfortable with it that I be like, I've become absolutely thick skinned. I'll just sketch out ideas and share in with my team. And I'm so like, even if they say, hey, this one is like really stupid idea, I feel absolutely happy that at least I know it initially that it's a stupid idea, right? If they suggest me some changes, I feel like, wow, I mean, that's really valuable, because maybe I would have learned that in after I have put a lot more hours into it. But I think I got that feedback initially. So that must have like saved a lot of time and efforts for me. So I think that ways I've really learned the value of feedback, and always, I think, being open. And I nowadays I actually look for opportunity to get feedback from people. And I think this is a valuable skill as a designer. It's always going to help you, because nobody actually comes with a perfect idea or a perfect being a perfect designer. Everyone is evolving. So be open to feedback and seek feedback. And I think that's all I had today. Like, I didn't want to, I think, touch upon a lot of technical things, but just in general wanted to keep it kind of open, and in terms of things which I learned. And I hope this resonated with you all. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts or any comments you all have. Happy to address that. I hope I didn't bore you all. um,
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a wonderful session. Okay, so we have some questions. Can we take them?
yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, first question we have is, please share some of your design tools that you use in your
Design
everyday
tools.
life as you. Yes.
Right. I use a lot of tools. Like, my big favorite is Figma, but as I said that I'm always like learning and evolving. I learn a lot of new tools also. So I learned to prototype. I've learned some I think prototyping tools like Principle, Prototype, and nowadays I'm actually prototyping on Figma as well. So these are my main tools.
Right.
For like, sometimes I'm doing motion work, I still use After Effects and some of the Adobe software. So yeah.
Okay, so the next question is, how important are case studies and how many of them would you require? Is considered good?
Okay, I am assuming this is from the perspective of a portfolio, like how many case studies would you like to have on your portfolio.
It's to
I
get a job as a UX designer was general statement.
Okay, okay. Hmm. So see, the idea, like, I think the best approach which I have learned is not to show like lots of case studies, not to confuse your viewer, but show few, but give like depth. I mean, go in depth in those case studies. Don't just design on the surface level. I've seen young designers doing this a lot, that just putting like 20 case studies where they've worked on 20 types of different projects. um, but it's all on surface level, so you don't deep dive. So I think a good thing is to showcase 4, 5, 6 maybe maximum case studies, but really getting into the depth, showing that what are the users, what did you learn through research, what kind of ideas did you explore, what was the process you followed. So show everything in a case study when you're doing it. Oh yeah.
Okay, I hope Suresh your question is answered. Next is a very good question. What is the difference between working in a startup and working in a big tech company? Difference or comparison between the stress in both these places?
Stress. Okay. So I think you must have got an idea from my own set of learnings of what I learned from being in Zomato as well as being in a big company. In if I keep a lens of stress, I think if you're a designer, you always have to deal with stress. But I think because being creative doesn't is not that easy. Like you have to break the boundaries and it will give you stress. You have to like I think in a startup the challenges are mostly being fast, doing things in a speedy manner, as I said, like being responsive to your audience quickly, learning a lot about how people are reacting to your product, and then being experimental. In a bigger company, the challenges are um, actually convincing different stakeholders, because in a project, if you're working on one product, generally there are big teams which are involved in it, and there are senior level people who would want to actually look at your concepts, approve it, and only then you move forward. So a lot of, I think, negotiation, convincing with stakeholders, I think that is what you learn, and those are the challenges. Now stress is something you can evaluate yourself as a person who, what do you think is will be more stressful for you. But yeah, I think both are invaluable. The learnings are invaluable. So yeah.
That was a great answer, ma'am. Thank you. The need of B design and M design for UI UX.
Okay. Hmm. Um. So let's
That's
like
bachelor's and master's,
let's
right?
right. I personally have done bachelor's. Um, I didn't get a chance to do masters. Basically, I didn't have the resources and didn't have the investment at that time. And I started getting good opportunities after I did bachelor's. So I didn't actually like got into masters, but things have definitely changed. I would say two things. One is, if you're getting a design degree, if you're getting a bachelor's and masters, it will give you a good like entry point. You might, your resumes might be selected or given priority over other resumes, for sure, I will not lie. That happens. But I think the second thing is, it's not a must, so you have to understand it's not compulsory. So like I personally didn't UX, but I am working UX, and I know a lot of like designers now, well, I think senior established designers who haven't done masters, who haven't like, I mean, who have come from different backgrounds like engineering or various backgrounds, but did a design degree after doing their graduation, and different kind of ladders, like different paths they have all followed. But what really matters is like, if you've got an opportunity as a like in a company, what did you do after that? So that is what is gonna define your growth after you join. But before that, yes, your if you have a degree, it will give you priority, but it's not a must. Like there are companies which are open to actually looking at your work, and then evaluating, and then kind of hiring, and not really just looking at the resumes and the degrees. So yeah, I
Great.
hope that has answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. So, Akin asks, can you mention, even if it's even a few in a few sentences, about the creation process of Microsoft's Fluent design system?
Right. Creation process of Fluent design system. Okay. So it's a pretty vast design system, firstly, and in just few lines, I mean, I can tell you that it was not done by one team. It was a highly collaborative process where there was a team which just specialized in working on design system, but there were different teams from different products which kind of shared their own learnings with the centralized team, and evaluated that will this work in the real scenario or not. So it was an extremely collaborative process, and then the other parts were making like the resources easy to use for the community. And that's how I think the design process worked. It was a long process and lots of teams were involved, and very iterative, quite iterative, not really like it involved a lot of feedback, design critiques, and being iterative all the time. It was a year long process, I would say.
Okay. So this is a question from Bikramjeet Singh. How do you do UI UX testing? Team does the testing or real end user test it before the launch?
Sorry, come again. The team, what did you
The
say?
team does the testing or the real end user tests it before the launch?
Ah, I see. Okay, that's a good question. There are multiple types of testing which we do, and as I said, that we don't stick to any process like, "Oh, this is the way we'll test." It sometimes changes based on the project itself, but most of the times we do a little bit of both. Like testing with team is kind of given, like I mean, as a designer working in an organization, you would definitely need to do that. You will have to test all your ideas with your team. So that's unavoidable. Testing with end users, sometimes it works in different ways. Sometimes you just involve end users in your initial ideation phases only, where you will test your early concepts, like just like prototypes and early concepts. Sometimes it's your beta testers, where you will have a app which is working and which is, like fully fledged and working in a proper manner, and you would give it to them and kind of give it to your beta testers for a certain amount of time, and then you would like basically get feedback from them. So there are different types of testing which we do, and I think it depends on company to company and project to project, most importantly.
Okay. Thank you for that. Rachna asks, can you please tell about the skills that you have picked up during your journey?
Right. As I mentioned, I think throughout the throughout the presentation, I was sharing that I am like I'm the kind of designer who gets bored easily from one thing. So I pick up lots of skills. If you'd ask me, I can do a lot of things. Like I know how to run research. I know how to do testing. I know how to, like, I'm good with creating, I think, prototypes. I understand motion design. I can do a bit of motion design as well. Then I understand the basics of UX writing. I'm not a pro, but I understand the basics. I'm really, I think, good with creating visual design, storytelling, and so I feel like I've picked a lot of skills. I do specialize in, I think, not specialized, but I feel like my strengths are ideation, like I think I could generate lots of ideas and kind of create a good representation, visual or in any other way I can represent my ideas easily and quickly. I think that's one of my strengths. um, and rest, I think, yeah, as I said, like all of the other things, I think I've learned in the way, but yeah, I don't specialize in all of them, so yeah.
Okay. So we'll be taking a final question. What are your advices for a design student? Pranav asks this.
Okay, so advisors, I know, like, lots of I think students ask for advice. One of the things I would want to say is that in today's time, there's a lot of information overload. So that was not the case in our time. We just knew few things and we would just do that. But nowadays, I've seen that students are very skeptic about, and they're very, like, they have all the information in the world. So they think so much that they don't do a lot. I feel like you stick stuck, like you get stuck at times, like one of the trends I've been observing. So as a designer, if you have some ideas, work on them. Like don't just evaluate, keep evaluating, thinking. I feel like because we have so much of information nowadays, we evaluate a lot. So avoid that. Be more hands on as a student. I think as a student being hands on is valuable. The more you can generate, the better for you. So you'll learn a lot, you'll get more feedback, and that will help you eventually. So don't get stuck. I think that's my advice. I hope that helps.
Yes. So with that, we come to an end for the Q&A session. Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering all these questions. And still, guys, if you have any further questions, we are attaching ma'am's LinkedIn uh, in the chat section. You can connect with her and ask for any queries that you want, anything. And also, we'll be sharing the feedback form. Kindly fill that for certificates. And that's it, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really honored to have you here with us. And we have indeed learned a lot. And thank you so much for sparing time for this event. Thank you, really. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for all your comments and being so interactive. Thank you so much. I mean, the questions were amazing. I love being here. Thank you, and all the best.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining in. You were all a great audience. We have attached the link to the feedback form. With that, you'll be getting your certificate. So do fill that. And also to join Designer, there's a link attached. This event was sponsored by Adobe XD, and there are many more sessions that are very exciting. So do join us, become a member, and get all the notifications for the further events so that we all can join and learn. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you.